That's one of my favorites. How about you? Yeah. So today's lesson is Transform It or Transmit It. It sounds like a good title for a Ninja Turtle movie that I'd want to see. Yeah. So welcome. Welcome to the first Sunday in Lent, a season that is ripe for transformation. Yes? Yes. The earth is transforming from a time of sleep to a time of life and regeneration. Spring will be here in 11 days, just in case anybody else is counting. And we can use this time of Lent to create transformation in our personal lives as well. Some people have already begun, as of Ash Wednesday, in giving up something. And other people partake in the habit of bringing on something, perhaps a new spiritual practice, perhaps a new behavior to create a habit, or perhaps a belief to replace an old, worn out, broken belief. All of this is to grow more intimate with our God, to deepen that relationship with the divine, and to live that spiritual life in a deeper, richer, more meaningful way. It's a beautiful time of growth. And as we go through life, we have all likely had experiences of bumps and bruises, joys and sorrows, tragedies and celebrations, hurt feelings and criticisms. And what we do about all these bruises or wounds that we have, even the teeny tiny ones, depends on our choice to either transform our pain and suffering or to transmit it. And we've all been around people, and we've maybe even contributed ourselves from a place of our hurt, from a place of our bruises, from a place from our wounds, from wherever they came. We hand our pain and suffering on to generation after generation. We hand the pain and suffering on to everyone around us. We've all walked into a room and noticed a person that is emitting energy that feels sad or hurt or lonely. We've all felt that. Sometimes that has even been us emitting that. Our untransformed wounds and bruises show up. They do show up. They show up as anxiety. They show up as addictions to many things. Of course, we think of alcohol or drugs, but there's shopping and eating and books and addiction to all kinds of things. Our untransformed wounds show up as avoidance, as resentment, and as anger. And, we are always making opinions, discernment, and judgments about what's happening in our life. Every single thing that pops up, we make an opinion about. And we decide the rightness or the wrongness, the goodness or the not goodness of everything that happens. And we maybe have had experiences just based on the onslaught of news around us, what happens in our country, and what happens in our world. I know that I sure did. And when I hear the news and see the sights, I started to feel a lot. I started to have a lot of thoughts. And I began to be concerned about some things. I began to be concerned when I heard about Social Security and Medicaid being adjusted. You see, I have a son who's very dear to me. My son was born and lives with developmental disabilities, and he is unable to have a job that allows him to fully support himself. So he relies on SSI. He relies on Medicaid for his health care. And the Department of Education ensured that my son was educated to his fullest capacity, to his fullest capabilities. Private schools and charter schools just don't do that. They're not expected, they're not asked, they're not mandated to do that. The Board of Education saw that my son got all the education that he needed. I felt concerned because my dearest friend is a transgender man who, by the way, served his country in the military. I was concerned for his well-being as he chose a restroom, as he chose to travel, what his ID said. My concern pretty quickly turned to worry. And I began to worry about what might happen with my son, what might happen with my dear friend. And much to my dismay, my worry turned to anger. I was angry because my elected officials didn't take the time to learn about the biology, the physiology, about the chromosomes and the hormones and the anatomy that are present for a transgender person. I was angry because some considered SSI and Medicaid to be entitlements that might be eliminated or reduced. I was angry that someone thought that my son was not worthy of these benefits. I look at my handsome son and I see a man who lives his best always. You know that saying that some people will give you the shirt off their back? That's my son. He will take the shirt off his back if he thinks you need it. Yes. I confess that I wasn't angry, proud of being angry. I didn't want to carry this anger with me, and I truly didn't want to transmit it. I really didn't want to send it out. I didn't want my anger to be my contribution to the consciousness of humanity. Goodness gracious, we had enough anger, didn't we? But here I was. Anger was stirring in me. I didn't want that because I know that I'm creating my life experiences by what I hold in my mind. I'm going to see that made manifest in front of me. I'm going to experience that anger if I hang on to it. I didn't want to do that. But here I was, feeling angry. So here's what I did. First, I turned to my scripture. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Be transformed by changing, renewing my mind. Easy, right? Not so much. Oh, not so much. The news blasts, the sound bites, the friends calling, the people reaching out was a constant reminder of what had triggered this anger in me. So here I was, not so easy, but I knew I can be transformed by renewing my mind, by changing the thoughts that I'm holding. We have this skill. So then I turned to silence. Silence is a gift for me. Silence is a place where I can make sense of those things in life that don't always make sense. So I got in my car, I drove myself to Mepkin Abbey, away from the distractions of my house, so I wouldn't vacuum, I wouldn't dust, I wouldn't make the beds or do the laundry. I was totally away. And when I arrived, I walked the grounds. It was a beautiful day. I sat under the massive live oak tree, and I let that tree hug me. And hug me, it did. I let that tree comfort me. I walked the wildflower path of the labyrinth. The wildflowers had grown so tall, they were probably 6 or 7 feet tall, all dried because it was winter. No blossoms. It was all dry and brown, and those flowers were waiting for spring just like me. And it was beautiful. I sat in the garden. I sat by the river, and I sat, and I walked until I was able to recall. I was able to recall, to call myself back to the awareness of that presence that lives in me, that yearns to express as me. I called myself back, recall, to the presence that is always there. And I believe with all my heart that presence is goodness. That presence is love. So I basked in that presence in me. We in our human use our free will to express in very peculiar ways. We act very peculiarly to each other. We don't always show kindness or generosity or gratitude. But I believe 100% that the presence that is the depth of me is good and is love. And with that recalling myself back to that presence, I began to recollect. I began to recollect, to bring those beliefs and those teachings that have supported and sustained me all of my life, those teachings that I hold dear, the teaching that we speak on Sunday, that we all have that spark of divinity. We all have that essence of divinity in us. Every single person. I can't look at another person that isn't divine. Regardless of how they're showing up, regardless of the words they use and the actions they take, they have that divinity in them. Just as sometimes it's hidden deep inside me and something else is expressing, so it might be with them as well. But every single person has that divinity. The divinity is there. It's deeply embedded. It's part of our DNA. We can't be without it. How we express it is our choice. And if I am co-creating with you and all of humanity, what is my contribution? I take responsibility for what I contribute to the world. Did I want to continue to contribute anger? No, I didn't. And when I am awake and aware and living intentionally, no way do I want anger to be what I give my world. I recollected my truth. I put myself back together the way I knew I was intended to be. And I began to be reminded, to remind, to bring back to my mind these teachings. The teaching of Ephesians 4:23, be constantly renewed in spirit of your mind. So I renew the spirit of my mind. I renew it daily. I renew it sometimes hourly. I renew it moment by moment. However often I need to, I renew the spirit of my mind over and over and over and over again and again and again and again. Constantly renew the spirit of my mind. And I was brought back to the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and a beautiful explanation of anger. And he says, when there is anger, I can use it to inspire helpful actions. I can use anger to inspire helpful actions. Anger can never remove anger. It can only make more anger. That Tay goes on to say that only understanding and compassion can put down the flames of anger in us. And understanding means that I have to take the time to know how another person gets to their conclusions, how another person gets to the thoughts they hold, to make room for other people having perspectives that are different based on their life. And when I make room for that kind of understanding, I make room for compassion. Remember our compassion exercise, just like me, they are trying to make sense out of life. Just like me, they are trying to make meaning. Just like me, they are trying to avoid suffering and pain. Just like me. And that's what this deep understanding brings me to. So I sat. And I sat. And I started within myself to change, to transform the anger so that I will transmit love. That would be my awake and conscious intention, to transmit love, right? That's what we're asked and commanded to do. Now, I still do the same things. I write. I call my legislators, I speak, and I stand. I attend hearings of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, rather than doing it with anger stirring in me, I do it from a place where I am transmitting love. I do it from a place where I am intentional on transmitting love. I've worked at transforming my anger so that I can transmit love, so that I may have thoughts that are formed from love, that I might speak words in kindness, and that the actions I take, whatever I do, are rooted in compassion. There was some efforting that went on to make that transformation. And I tell you this about my transformation because it's important to me, and it's important for me to understand all of these things that built up and culminated in anger for me were my opinions, my perspective, my should-bes in life, holding on to them so tightly. And when I am willing to let them go, to hold them loosely, not to give them up, because I hold my morals, my values deeply, we all do, but to loosen the reins a little, that we all have our own opinions, decisions, and perspectives. And it all comes from our lived experiences. It all comes from our generational teachings. Just as we pass on love and everything else, we pass on teachings from generation to generation, familial beliefs. We all have our perspectives and opinions based on our institutional teachings from where we came and from our culture. And when I remember those things, I allow room for what is different than what I think and what I see and what I hold as to be true. And when I get real with myself, when I am honest with myself, I know that my view, my human view, is very limited to what's in front of me. My human view is very small. And I live in a world, I live in a field of infinite possibilities, of infinite potential, of infinite opportunities. And you live in that same field. So as we observe this first Sunday of Lent, as we move through this transformational season of Lent, what in you is wanting to be transformed? What in you is ready, willing, and asking to be transformed? So that our good can shine, so that our light can shine, so that our love can shine. So say it with me, let all you do be done in love. Namaste.